Okay, everybody, welcome to episode 12 of the Running Shorts podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lee. The Running Shorts podcast is by runners for runners. We speak with everyone to learn about their running journey. Today, my guest is Cherie Yanek, who is the founder, organizer, and race director of the Burning Man 50K Ultramarathon. If you don't know what Burning Man is, you're in for a real treat this conversation. Burning Man is a temporary city that sprouts in the desert of Nevada every fall at the end of August and beginning of September timeframe. Individuals attend Burning Man to leave behind the default world and create something very beautiful yet ephemeral. It's called Burning Man because there's a large wooden effigy that is set on fire at the event. And the first event happened back in 1986 in San Francisco, and it was first hosted in Nevada in 1990, or the first man was burned in Nevada in 1990. 2020 was supposed to be the 31st year that the effigy of the man was burned in Black Rock City, but unfortunately, the mass participation event in real life will be held virtually, not in person, due to COVID-19. We're going to dig into Cherie's running background, the Burning Man Ultra, and more. So welcome to the show, Cherie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so let's go into our dynamic warm-up. And before we start talking about Burning Man and the 50K and things like that, would love to hear from you and learn more about you and maybe describe where you're from.
I grew up in Long Island. I haven't lived there in a long time. I live in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I'm getting sick of the city, especially after being quarantined in a one-bedroom apartment with my husband and my 22-month-old. So yeah, I love New York, but I like nature more.
Yeah, it's my wife and I are doing the same thing. Just the two of us, no child, but being in a one bedroom apartment is a little cozy for 24/7 indefinitely. Um,
Area.
so I appreciate that. So you've always been in the New York City or the in the New York in New York State.
Yeah, I went to grad school for 2 years in Boulder. So I got my MFA at Naropa University, but then I came back.
Got it. And were you athletic growing up? Did you run a lot?
I was pretty uncoordinated at all sports, and then in maybe eighth grade, my gym teacher asked who wanted to go running with him around the track, and I was the only one who said yes. So during gym class every day, I kept running more and more, and each class I would be like, "Oh, I ran 8 laps. I ran 9 laps." And then eventually I joined track when I was in eighth grade, and I ran the 400 meters, and it's my first race, and I won it. So gone a long way from there, but yeah, I started running when I was in eighth grade, and I've been running since.
Do you think that you kept running because it was something that you were good at, or what do you think kept you coming back to the sport?
So when people ask me like, why do you run? For me, it's the time in my life when I feel happiest, most free, most alive. Like that's the best way I know how to describe it. Um, and it's my drug of choice, I guess you could say. I love running so much. It's the one constant like my whole life.
Mhm.
Most of my life pretty much.
Yeah. Um, and did you end up running in college, or how much running did you end up doing after kind of adolescence and growing up in high school time?
So I ran in college, but we were a D3 school, so it wasn't like super competitive or anything, but it did factor into the decision because I almost went to another school that didn't have any kind of cross country or track.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I graduated, I still kept running. It was nice when I moved to Boulder just because it's a beautiful place to run, but terrible place if you have asthma. I had a lot of issues out there with the altitude, so wasn't the best city for me in terms of that. So I think a lot of people who run and have asthma might have similar issues of the altitude being a big factor. But then I got into marathons after I finished with grad school, and then I ended up meeting a friend. And after we became friends, she ran ultras. So kind of connecting with her, and then that's kind of what led me to ultras.
Got it. And when is Boulder hard just because the elevation and asthma? It's really hard to just kind of get enough air, or
It's not that. It's not like super high like Leadville or anything. So like some people are probably like might roll their eyes at me, but I really had a hard time out there.
Mhm.
It's only like a little over a mile high.
Mhm.
It's super dry, but for some reason it just didn't work with my lungs. I was in the hospital. Like I went to the emergency room and in an ambulance one time too. So, like after 2 years of school, I kind of like, I think it's really beautiful out there. I still have some friends in Colorado, friends in Leadville, but I just kind of made a decision that I'm not going to race out there just because I know that, I could have some issues and I don't want to end up on that route.
Yeah, I went to Denver last fall, and I had a ton of trouble with the elevation. I was coming from sea level from New York City, and I remember I went for a 4 mile run one day, and I just had a horrible headache. I had to lay down and take a nap, and I didn't end up running for the next 2 days after that. It was really challenging.
Yeah, if people from Colorado are listening, they're gonna be like, "Oh, these East Coast wimps." But I don't know. I had a really tough time, and I was there for 2 years. So yeah.
So you said you got into marathons after grad school. This was because a friend told you, or
No, I got into marathons. I always kind of wanted to run a marathon, and then
Mm,
I wanted New York to be my first. So I
mm,
kept trying to get in through the lottery. Eventually, I got in, and then kind of got into running marathons. And then I met a girl. It was like in the old days. It was a long time ago. Where I posted an ad on Craigslist seeking female running partner. And I got like 10 men sending me messages. But I ended up meeting this girl, and she became a close friend of mine. And she had just run her first ultra marathon right after we became friends. And so that's kind of where she was like my introduction to ultras. So the first race I did was one that she had done. We did it together the next year. She ran faster than me, but a bunch of us went up and did it. And it was called like J Challenge. It was like 33 miles, but you ran up and down ski mountains through streams. It was like so crazy difficult, like the hardest thing I ever done. I think it took me like 8.5 hours,
wow.
which sounds like a lot, but it's actually like the terrain was so hard that it wasn't like I was in last place.
Mhm. And what year was New York for your first marathon?
So I'm not like most running people where like I can tell you like my PRs.
Mm,
Let me think. I'm so bad at this. So I moved back to New York in 2003 from Boulder. I think it was the following year, 2004.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I'm really bad with like stats of my own, and yeah. I'm not like a lot of runners are like very type A, and I'm like a little more disorganized.
Do you that's it's so interesting because I think that a lot of runners, like you're right, are very like meticulous about like this date, this time, down to the second. Do you think that says something about who you are as a runner, that you're not as much into kind of like big city marathons or like the road running scene, that you're kind of like on the trails and you're more free, or how does that reflect, and is there a deeper insight, or maybe I'm just trying to pull a nugget where it doesn't exist?
Um, I don't know, like I started in marathons and road races and I like never totally found my niche. And then like moving into trail running is definitely more my thing, where it's like I've literally had people like I've been like I remember one race I was having a hard time with my asthma and I was walking and this woman was like, "This is me walk 100K." A number of years ago, and this woman saw me and she's like, "Well, do you want me to walk with you? I'll just walk with you the rest of the way." I'm like, "But there's 6 miles to the finish." She's like, "I can stay with you." Like that's the culture I think of trail running and ultras, more of like people, like it's more about like people and community, and I don't get that as much in road races and marathons. Marathons you get like I'm admitted, like when I was training, I was like, I have to qualify for Boston. Every race has to be a PR. But in PR, I was like a loser and like horrible, runner. Like, you put all this stuff in yourself and it's totally terrible. And I think that's one of the reasons I got sick of it. And my mom, I remember saying to me once, said like, "Why do you do marathons? Every time you do a marathon, you're miserable." Because if I didn't PR, it was like a failed race, even if,
Mm,
I ran really well.
yeah, yeah, there is a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves, and sometimes it takes the fun right out of it.
Yeah, I was pretty competitive like a few years ago, especially in like 24-hour races. And
Hmm.
that ended up putting like kind of similar pressure on me, where I
Hmm.
remember one race, I was second place and it was the 24-hour national championships,
Hmm.
the USATF ones. And I ran 116 miles, which is the best I'd ever run. But like,
Hmm.
I didn't run 120 miles, which was my goal.
Hmm.
And so I felt like, oh my God, like what, like I was such a failure. And I a lot of that's obviously coming from myself. Nobody said that to me. And so now I'm having, it's kind of nice that, I mean, I'm sad my races in the future have been canceled, but it's also like nice. Like I've been running like an hour and a half every day, no pressure, just kind of like enjoying it. And it's a different feeling.
Yeah, we definitely should not undersell how fast you are as a runner, because, you know, I looked at Ultra Sign Up at some of your results, and I think what I saw is that you run 100 races that are just on Ultra Sign Up, not to mention like all the other stuff that's somewhere else, whether it's New York Road Runners or unsanctioned or whatever the case is. But then your age rank is also like the 82nd percentile. So you're finishing way up there in a lot of these races. So we should definitely make sure that people know that even though maybe you don't take it super seriously, you don't take yourself super seriously, you're still very competitive in a lot of these things.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like I had a baby like almost 2 years ago, and so since then I haven't really been as much in the competitive mindset. And it would be interesting to kind of see, to like really race a race. So
Hmm. Do you see yourself, you know, trying to get back into a more competitive mindset, or do you think that you've kind of grown past that point in your life?
I mean, I think I can be a little competitive, but I don't want it to be like where I was running 160 miles and calling myself a failure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is like, that's a really sad example, because that was a huge race. I ran really well, ran the best I had run, and then I'm calling myself a failure, you know?
Right. Yeah. It does. It's quite incongruent, right? That, I mean, you can run 116 miles in 24 hours. I mean, that is an incredible amount. So, um, you know, you're based in Greenpoint, New York. When I moved here, I was kind of blown away by how many run crews there are out here. Do you run with run crews? Do you run on your own?
So I used to be an NBR, North Brooklyn Runners. Like I think I was like the fourth person to join or something,
Mhm.
and just kind of faded away. They're very a lot of my friends in the club just kind of left or moved other places or whatever, and they're very focused on marathons, New York runner races. So I kind of realized I didn't have as much in common with a lot of them. So right now I've been running. Obviously, it's like COVID right now. I'm taking it pretty seriously. I was sick from COVID. My aunt passed away from COVID, so I have been running by myself. Only during this time, but I do have a few friends, actually a couple of my good running friends. Like one of my favorite running partners moved to Montana, and so I do have a couple friends here, but it's a lot of it's on my own.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about you know, your aunt passing away, and you know, at least you know, I'm sorry to hear about that, and glad that you're recovered, because I'm sure that was a very scary time.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, and I think it's also scary because a lot of runners aren't taking it seriously, and
Mm,
I like just yeah, I'm having some issues now, especially because of like I think a lot of people, if it hasn't touched them, they don't understand the ramifications. So
right, right. I think that if you are isolated and you're like, well, I don't know anybody, then it's hard to empathize a little bit, and so maybe there are some challenges there. Do you think that maybe some of your cardiovascular health helped you in terms of responding to the illness?
yeah, my mom said something similar to me. I don't. It's weird because my husband and I both got it,
Hmm.
and I got it like I was in bed. I was sick for a week and a half, like really
Hmm.
sick. Didn't
Hmm.
run, so like if I don't run, that means I'm like incredibly sick. Like
Hmm.
usually, if I have a cold, I'm still out there running, or a migraine, I'm still running. Like I'm one of those people.
Right.
But I was also taking lots of herbs, like I was taking echinacea and elderberry and tulsi and all this stuff to try to boost my immune system. So I don't know if that helped.
Mhm.
But it didn't really settle in my lungs like it has for a lot of other people.
Hmm.
So maybe I'm not sure. It's kind of, I feel like maybe in another year or two we'll know more, and it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Does your husband run? Do you guys run together?
So we met because he was in my running club, and then he's battled with a bunch of injuries, and so
Mm.
he probably he doesn't run it that regularly. But then last summer he ended up doing his first Ironman with almost no run training, and he ran. Oh, this is where I show you I'm not very good at like times and stuff. I think it was like 5:20 or 5:30, but I think that's really good. I think
Oh
that's
my
what
God.
it's really good if you have barely trained and then you just swam 2.2 miles,
Hmm.
and then you biked 112.
Yeah.
So I was pretty proud of him.
Wow, that's amazing. And are you one of the moms out there that's running with a running stroller?
Yeah, yeah. I have to say it's a lot harder to run with a running stroller. So if you see someone and they are like trying to have trouble negotiating it, you can stepping out of the way. They would really appreciate that. I didn't realize how hard it was to run with a running stroller until I got it. The first time I did it, I like couldn't make it 2 miles. I was like, I kept having to stop. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
so I have a
Yeah.
lot more admiration for like Michael Wardian and all his records on the running stroller.
Yeah, it is hard because I mean you don't get the same kind of like arm motion when you're pushing it, and obviously you're pushing 10, 20, 30 pounds in that thing, and so it's hard to get up the bridges here in New York. Let's talk a little bit about your day job before we transition. So what do you do for your day job?
So right now I'm working as a school librarian, working at home, which is a little
Mhm.
strange, but yeah, I've been a librarian for like 15 years. I was doing a lot of freelance writing and haven't been doing as much recently, but yeah, that's my main thing. And I was coaching some runners, and honestly, like after I have my daughter, I just don't have as much time to do that. And the same, I was teaching yoga as well. So I was doing a lot of stuff for a while.
Mm. Do you coach? Where are you a librarian at a school or at a?
Yeah, I work at it's a K to 12 private school.
Got it. And so do you coach the like high school teams or the middle school teams too?
No,
Or
I thought about it, but it's just, this is gonna sound terrible. But it's like a lot of commitment,
yeah.
to do it. And I remember my coaches gave it their alls, and I would want to be there giving it everything. And like, it's really hard because my daughter is like almost 2. And so I want to be with her after work. And also my husband's been in grad school. He's almost done like next week. So it's been like, like a lot of the extra time that it's been like a big time crunch. So
Yeah.
I'd like to do it someday because it's so much fun, and I have such great memories from high school and college.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for your husband finishing grad school. It's certainly going to be a weird commencement ceremony walking across the living
Yeah.
room, but that's still quite the accomplishment. So let's kind of transition and talk in our long, slow distance of this portion of our conversation. And would love to just hear more about your journey to Burning Man and the 50K and organizing it. So when did you first attend Burning Man?
So I first went in 2008, and I had kind of heard about Burning Man for years. I was like a big raver and club kid in the like late 90s, late 90s. And then in the early 2000s, still would sometimes go out, and I had kind of heard about it. I would go to like a lot of these underground parties. I didn't realize that burners were putting them on, but just like knew I love this kind of scene. And then ended up going in 2008. I was supposed to go with a huge group of people. Everyone bailed,
Mm.
and I was going to sell my ticket. This is like a Burning Man kind of story. And the guy on Craigslist responded to my post, and he was like, "I'm so sorry you're not able to go to Burning Man. Like, can I still buy? Is your ticket still available?" And I was like, "Wow, this is what burners are like. They're sorry I'm not going." And I decided to go. So I ended up going with a friend of mine who was in love with me, which is a terrible idea. We're not friends anymore. But it was great. And then I immediately saw, like, if you go to Burning Man, some people go to Burning Man and they just take, and they go to the clubs and they go to the events, and like that's definitely a way to do it. But the way is really to give back. So my first year, I hosted a librarian cocktail party with another librarian, and that was super fun. But I didn't really think about running. I just thought, okay, I'll run out there. And then I ran the 5K. The organizer of the 5K is actually a friend of mine now, Steven. And I was thinking like, okay, this was really fun, but there needs to be an ultra. So I was running, and my rule for Burning Man, other than the 5K, was just to kind of run and stop whenever anything interesting comes along. So you've been to Burning Man too, like your runs have lots of stops.
Yep.
So I ended up stopping. This one guy was like, "Hey, come here." And I was like, "All right." It's Burning Man. When people say that, you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
So I ended up talking to this guy. We became friends. I actually, when I ran Happily 100, I stayed at his house, and I was telling him, "Oh, we're talking about running," and we stayed in touch. And I was saying, I want to put on a 50K here. I want to put on an ultra because that's my thing. And Burning Man's about giving back your thing. So like if you make perfume, you go and you give out perfume, or whatever. If you're great at massage, you go and you give out massages. If you have a microbrewery in your basement, you bring that beer, like whatever it is, you bring it. So I kind of talking about like having this idea. And so the next year I was seeing that same friend of mine. We ended up becoming friends and talking and stuff. He was like, Cherie, I'll help you put this on. Like, stop talking about it. And so he kind of was the one who like pushed me. He's not involved in the race. Really, he helped me the first few years. But he was the one kind of like to push me to be like, like it's Burning Man. Do what your passion is.
Yeah, I do love that everybody, well, everybody should, when they go there, they try to bring something unique and their own contribution to the society that's up there for, 7 to 10 days. So it's really special that, the first year you were doing, library and cocktails, and then and now you've been doing the Burning Man 50K, which is, it's pretty awesome. For people who don't know about Burning Man, because I feel like maybe in New York City there's a pretty good scene. I was in the Bay Area before, where there's definitely a big scene. How would you describe it for somebody who's never heard of it before or seen pictures of it?
Okay, you have to go is like the best way to describe it, but I've heard it described as a playground for adults, which I think it definitely is. It's a temporary city built in an area of Nevada where there is nothing. Like right now, if we went there, it's a dry lake bed. It's surrounded by mountains, so it's absolutely gorgeous. But everyone builds a city. So everything that is there is brought in. So people bring in places to sleep. People bring in food to eat. It's a gift economy. So the only things that you can buy are coffee and ice. Everything else is gift. Just siren. Just give it. It's all gift economy of people giving what they love, giving what they make, and there are these 10 principles that Burning Man goes by. I don't have them all in front of me, but I think it makes it different from another event where you go in and the focus is like, oh, I have to buy this $10 bottle of water and this $15 beer. Burning Man, you go and I'm like, hey, you come into my camp right now. We're drinking these awesome drinks right now. You want to have these margaritas with this flaming hot sauce? And you're just like, that sounds disgusting. Sure. And you come in and you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Like I will climb sculptures that seem scary and hop on the back of someone's BMX bike. And, like you do things that you normally wouldn't do because it's a place to experiment and explore, but also to share. I think for me, that's one of the biggest things is the community and the sharing. And one of the 10 principles is participate, no spectators. So everyone participates. And that's the idea. And obviously some people don't follow the rules, but the people come and they bring and they share. And that's what makes it so special.
Yeah. When my wife and I went in 2015, it was our first time, and I completely agree with you. I think there's like nowhere else on earth that's like it. It truly feels like a little bit like Mad Max in the middle of the desert, and there's flames everywhere and really weird and cool art. And it is a really incredible, experience that can't be mimicked or copied. What I really liked about what you said is that, it is a place to experiment and explore and share. And I also love the community around it that, in our everyday world, sometimes it can be really hard to meet new people, experiment and try new things. And it's one of those places where it's like, you don't have to feel weird, like going into a random community or group or, group out there. I mean, everyone is so sociable. It's really cool. I have seen some of your writing before, and you described it as the following. For most of the year, there's nothing out there: no people, plants, animals, or bugs. Just the playa, which is the nickname for Black Rock City, a flat, dried up lake bed surrounded by mountain ranges and a 2-lane country road. The closest town, Gerlach, has a population of 100. But for a week every August, Black Rock City is the 5th most populous city in Nevada with 66,000 inhabitants. And so, I mean, you wrote this, I think, back in 2015, and it's funny, 5 years later, this is a lot of those same things are coming out in how you're describing it right now. So the first time you went was in 2008. Have you gone every year since?
Yeah. And it's funny because the first time I was like, I'm not going to be one of those burners. Those people are crazy. They're lining up at the gate for when it opens. And then, of course, sure enough, the next year I'm driving through the night with my friend. Like, we got to get there in the middle of the night. And like, yeah, I haven't skipped it because I think it means something. Like, even when I was pregnant with my daughter, my husband was like, well, you can't go to Burning Man. And I was like, why not? Like, she was born on her due date, which was June 26th. And he's like, well, she's going to be too little. And I was like, well, I have to go. I'm putting on the race. I have to go to, like, it wasn't a question. He was like, he was super nervous, and it was Burning Man, such a great place for a baby. Like, provided, I'm going to caveat that with, like, we sleep in a yurt. I think it would be really hard in a tent. Because it, like, unless you have like a super strong tent, but we have a yurt which is pretty climate controlled and sealed from the dust. But everybody wants to like hold your baby and help you out, and it was so great. It was absolutely great. And she had such a good time last year. I'm sad she's not going to be there. We're not going this year, because I think she would have even more fun.
Yeah, it I've seen tons of kids there, and it's really cool because Burning Man can be anything that you want it to be. You can go and explore art, you can run around naked all week, whatever the case is. But it's a really, I think, cool way to just show kids that there's a different way of living, other than what you see, in your everyday life. And I think the only thing you really have to worry about, that anybody has to worry about, is obviously just the dust and the harsh environment, and you want to make sure that they're taken care of and things like that. But so you've gone every year since. Do you normally go now early so that you can set up your yurt and set up the course and do all the course marking? Or what's your kind of like yearly schedule or typical schedule around like Labor Day weekend when you're getting out to Black Rock City?
So we usually fly out about a week and a half before the gate opens, and then we usually spend about 4 or 5 days in Reno, like cleaning camp stuff, shopping, organizing, picking up packages, and then we head out to the playa on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then we build our whole camp. My main focus is the race, so I spend like most of my time on, honestly, organizing that. So I'll do things like meet with medical personnel from ESD to kind of just go over stuff, mapping the course out. So I usually measure it several times, just setting stuff up, organizing everything. It's funny because I always feel like I don't help build my camp as much in terms of the actual infrastructure, but it's because I'm building all this stuff for the race.
Yeah. And so you camp with Pink Lightning, is that right?
Yeah.
And when did you start camping with Pink Lightning?
So, okay. So when I first did the ultra the first year, it was like I had a camp with my friend called Twin Bikini, and it was just like our little camp of like what we called ourselves, because a lot of people just have like a small camp that's not official or anything. And then I started asking for placement from Burning Man because I needed to get there. I was getting there early. They were giving me early passes so I could measure the course, but I realized I actually needed a place so that I could tell people to come, and also to like for a start and finish. I wanted to be part of the course because I was having it in these other locations. The first 2 years, the start and finish was at the Man, and the second year we were on 10 and L. There was a camp out there, and we just kind of set up some stuff on the corner over there, and like whatever, they just it's Burning Man, so you don't really care. It's fine. But so the third year I had asked for placement, and we were trying to toss around names. It was just, at that point, it was just a couple of friends of mine, and who, we were camping together. And then one of my old friend's ex-husbands or whatever, he thought of the name Pink Lightning. We were kind of tossing around different ideas. And so that name kind of stuck. And in the beginning it was just like, oh, we're all friends, and oh yeah, the ultra's here. And Burning Man gave us placement just for the ultra. And then what we started doing is, like, we kind of wanted to be more than the ultra. So we started to become more focused around the ultra. The ultra is like the biggest part of our camp, but we started incorporating other events into the camp. So it's not just that. It still is. A lot of the people are runners in our camp, but some of them are friends of ours who definitely do not run, but everybody in our camp supports the race in some way, because that's our big event. So everyone volunteers that day, everyone helps out, or they run. So it's nice. I feel like it could be like sometimes we'll get people that say they want to camp with us, and we're definitely open to new campmates. But when people are like super we have one person that was like, well, I want to be in a sober camp because with runners, and we're like, well, we're not actually sober, like we like when we have like parties, we definitely drink, and it's Burning Man. So, and I think that's the thing, when you're a Burning Man, you have to kind of be okay with things that you don't like being around.
Right.
And obviously, like, you shouldn't, if you want to be in a completely sober camp, there are several sober camps that you can totally join. But, we do the beer mile. So I wouldn't want someone to camp with us and be really uncomfortable when the beer mile is going on. So Burning Man is I think, so anyway, so Pink Lightning started around that, and we have like a lot more events. So I kind of founded Pink Lightning. We have a couple other, like my husband was in it he's joined like the second year, but, it's more than just the ultra now. It's like this community. Like when my husband and I got married, we had a table of Pink Lightning people, and it's like that, like that's one of the main reasons I'm really sad that Burning Man's not happening, is because I'm not going to see a lot of these people.
Yeah. Is Burning Man maybe the one time a year that you see some of the people in that camp?
Yeah, a lot of our friends are in the Bay Area, but also now across the country. So like last year we ended up doing a bunch of work on the camp and upgrades, and we all met for a weekend in April in Reno, and that was so great. But I have no idea what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really one of the biggest challenges right now, obviously in the current health environment, is obviously the health piece, but a little bit of sense of loss around community and being able to gather in the communal nature of being in person and the effervescence you get with other people. So what is the Pink Lightning vibe? Is it a running community or camp, or is running just maybe like the unifying thread, but everyone, there's a lot of other aspects to it?
So everyone does not run. I'll say that. I would say we're runners who don't take ourselves too seriously, and even my friend Matt, he's won the ultra at Burning Man. I don't know if it's once or twice. Matt's really fast, but Matt's the kind of guy, like, he'll like run the last 10 miles, take his shorts off, and he'll stop and take a shot. Like, that's the thing I love about Matt. Matt is a super competitive runner, but he's having such a great time. And that's kind of like the big, like, I feel like, that's what we're about. And some of us don't run, but they think it's hilarious. They think we're crazy. They make fun of us. My friend Todd runs, but he just makes fun of all runners. He's like, runners are stupid. You're the worst. And then he's going out for his like third lap of the ultra or whatever, So it's like, we have fun. We put on a bunch of other events. We started to bring our own passions. So like Todd started a beard grooming spa, and one of my campmates made these amazing tarot cards and started doing tarot readings. So we definitely got like a lot of other things, like bringing our own passions into the camp.
Cool. I love it. You said that when you first went, you didn't envision going back every year, and this year was going to be, I don't know, year 12 or 13. What do you think it is that keeps drawing you back in? And do you see it as something indefinitely that you're going to be doing?
I think the whole thing about COVID is that it's taught us all that everything is temporary, and we like to think we know what's going to happen next, and you never do. So there's been a lot of like grumbling that Burning Man might not ever happen again, and not just this year, and that idea makes me super sad, because I love Burning Man. Like, the community is what draws me back, the people, and especially the race. Like, as I said, when I found out I was pregnant, I was so excited, but then my husband saying, oh, we can't go with a 7-week-old. It was totally great. I think she was like 6 weeks when we got there. But it was, like, the people, like, these people have like changed my life. Like, the race has changed a lot of people's lives. I know people that got into running because of the ultra at Burning Man, and like, I know people who met their partner through the race, just things like that. And so that makes me like feel like I'm giving back to the community, and I want to keep putting on this race. So when I found out Burning Man was canceled, it was stunned. And then, already like, okay, we're going to do some sort of virtual race. I'm not sure how it's going to happen yet. But, I want to try to, it's not going to be the same, obviously, but try to figure out a way to kind of create community.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you said, you're thinking through ideas of what you can do this year. the idea of a virtual 50K, virtual beer mile, maybe even a virtual naked mile. Maybe that's like a midnight streak.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. My friend Todd, he's the one that does the naked mile. But I definitely want to do. I want to do like a virtual beer mile, and I think that would be really fun, and we could do it. We could do it like through Zoom or something else.
Mhm.
The 50K, I don't think we'll do like with nobody's going to have the battery on their phone to run for 50K with it, but I think I have some ideas. We need to start figuring out stuff soon. I'm kind of waiting honestly on Burning Man for
Mm,
what virtual Burning Man's going to look like. So when are we going to host the ultra and that sort of
mhm,
thing?
mhm.
But hopefully I'm hoping things look a lot better in the world and that people can either gather where they are. Obviously I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're still on lockdown in New York and we have no idea when we're going to get out.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Yeah.
think like we'll be figuring, I think probably in the next month or so, a lot of that will be figured out.
Yeah. So when I was there in 2015, I did not run the ultra marathon. I was a little bit too afraid of the idea of being out there for hours and hours, but my wife and I, we did run the 5K. So, just 10 times more in terms of what we did not do of the 50K. But I definitely remember seeing it and thinking to myself, oh my God, like that's pretty insane. Like I would want to go back and do that. So, hopefully, knock on wood, the next time the live event in person happens, hopefully in 2021, I'll be out there running too. So when you think about the logistics of putting it on, I mean, Burning Man, one of the principles that we talked about is radical self-reliance. And so how much hand-holding are you doing to make sure that people are safe out there and, uh, in terms of your organization of the race?
So this has been kind of a big concern of mine. So we've had some issues over the past few years with people getting dehydrated,
Mhm.
people going to medical for IVs after the race. Like you get really dehydrated. If you have an IV, it makes you feel amazing when you're dehydrated. And a lot of us at Burning Man are dehydrated, even if you don't run a 50K. So we had some people who were taking advantage of that. Also, people weren't running with water, and a couple people got really sick. So I realized that the future of the race could be in danger if this is like a pattern of multiple people going to ask for IVs. Oh, I ran the ultra, I'm dehydrated.
Mhm.
And I get that sometimes you definitely need that. Like that's totally valid. I think even people who are taking care of themselves sometimes don't, still need some help, but people who were refusing to run with a handheld water bottle or a backpack. So I made a rule a few years ago that you have to run with some water. It's the one thing I've gotten in arguments with people about it. Because a lot of people don't want to run with it. It's really annoying to run with a water bottle if you're not used to it. You get, as an ultra runner, you kind of get used to it. So, but some people who are new to ultras or who want to be really competitive, especially if you're really fast, it might not make as much sense. Oh, I'm going to be done by 8 a.m. or,
Mhm.
8:30, or 9 a.m. Like, why do I
Mhm.
need to carry water? It's not that hot then. But
Mhm.
it's just like, we need to have this rule because everyone needs to do it. We all need to kind of respect the same rule. I think that's one thing that I've had a big challenge on, kind of encouraging people. The way the race is set up, Burning Man, as I said, doesn't cost anything. So I asked people, we do collect donations, and the donations go to medals, numbers, t-shirts, things like that. They're totally optional, and people do that ahead of time. So it's not like you have to like give money to sign up to run or anything. But I'd say everyone's race fee, quote unquote, is you bring a gallon of water and a running snack to share.
Mhm.
And so, most people are totally generous and great with that. But we had a few years ago, it was super hot, and not everyone brought water,
Mhm.
and we ended up running out of water because if it's really hot, a lot of people are going to end up drinking more, especially if you're kind of running later in the day.
Mhm.
But like, this is what the Burning Man community is about. I got up and I made an announcement. Hey, I'm dipping into my camp's water supply. They're not happy about this. Does anyone have extra water that they can gift me?
Mhm.
And I had a couple people gift water to our camp. So we were fine. And that's like kind of like an example of how Burning Man works. Okay, somebody messed up and didn't bring water.
Mhm.
We're in trouble. Somebody's going to help. And I think that's the really beautiful thing. And it just shows the community of Burning Man.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. I think that sometimes people can kind of just be focused on themselves and not think about how they're actions impact others. And it's such a austere environment like, Black Rock City, where I remember, we were rubbing coconut oil on our hands every night because our skin was just cracking and it felt like we were kind of like falling apart from the outside in. But you definitely have to, make sure that you take care of yourself and you take care of your community. And so that makes sense as well. Do you call the event a race? Is it a race?
Yeah, it's definitely a race. It's whatever you want. I think for some people it's a huge challenge. Some people start running to do it. But I think I don't want the focus to be on just like who won. I think it should be on so we do placement awards, but then one of the things one of the runners, Darren, he is from Vancouver, really nice guy. He makes the placement awards every year. So then I started kind of being like, okay, can we have like awards that aren't just 1, 2, 3? He does top 10. I said, can you have some other ones? So he does fastest naked runner and most likely to eat a burrito while running, and sexiest runner, and like other like some really silly things like that, which I think like that's kind of the spirit of the race. And even if this is really hard for you, or even if you're competitive, I want people to get more out of it than like, oh, I ran this race in 4:13:46. It's like, it's not just about your time, it's about the experience. Like I feel like the first lap we start at 5 a.m. so it's totally dark. And so you see the lights. And for those who haven't been to Burning Man, like, Burning Man is full of like amazing lights. People are wearing crazy costumes. Their bikes are covered with lights because there aren't street lights out there, right? So we light ourselves up with like all sorts of cool lights, L-wire and everything else. And then the second lap, the sun is starting to come up, and there are some epic sunrises out from the trash fence. So you're running past them, and it like gives you chills. That's how gorgeous it is. And then the third lap, people have gone to bed, it's starting to get quiet, and that's what I call the hard lap. Like that's where I struggle every year. And then the fourth lap, it's starting to get hot, but people are waking up. And then people know about the ultra. They've been like learning about the ultra for years, so people are like, hey, it's those ultra runners. And then you do a little out and back and you're done. So it's like the out and back is like you're so excited to be done. So thinking about it in terms of like something like that, like, oh my God, I can't wait to see the sunrise, like that, instead of being like, okay, I have 7.2 miles to go. Like some people wear headphones, and I feel like if you're wearing headphones at the Burning Man Ultra, you're missing out on so much. You're missing out on someone shouting to you that they have free shots of moonshine or vodka, or like there was a stand of like fresh coconut water from coconuts, and someone making hot dogs and a martini mile. And like, this is like, it's such a place to really be present because it's an experience.
Yes, you said so much in that section right there that makes me so nostalgic for the experience, because it is completely pitch black in the middle of the night. You're in the desert. There are no street lights, and you see the most amazing stars, and you also see like the incredible like LED lights from different camps and art cars and things like that. So it is incredible at that point. And then when you do get to sunrise, and a lot of people, they stay up all night and they're dancing, and they're waiting for the sun to rise, and they're howling at the sun when it just crests over the horizon, which is kind of like a magical, very primal moment. And then what you're talking about, lap 3, when it's like people are going to sleep because they've been up all night, and they're just going to get a few winks before things start up again for the day. It's all very incredible. It's one of a kind. Who has run the most Burning Man ultras? Is that you?
I don't know. So it's funny because for the longest time we were counting, there were a couple of us who had run every year, but then Kathy skipped a year. So last year, not last year, the year before, I had just had my daughter, and I didn't think, I was breastfeeding like every 2 hours. I was like usually I run the race, and then I thought I can't run the race and put on, and actually direct the race, because I'm gonna have to take breastfeeding breaks. It's gonna take me like 14 hours. So the day after the race, I was like, I want to run the 50K. So I did my own 50K the next day. So not as part of the regular race. I think me and Kathy have both run it the most times, the same amount, because we each kind of skipped a year.
Yeah.
It was a different experience to do it the day after the race. But I still got, I had a Aperol spritz in the middle of the race, and I had a stranger put sunblock on my sunburned butt. And, it was that kind of experience of like, Yeah, it was fun.
What was the most challenging scenario that you've had with the race in terms of weather, in terms of something, a participant, any like horror stories?
Mm, so I had some participant stories I can't share about, but um, I guess we've had a couple dusty years. It's never so if you've been to Burning Man before, like dust storms usually don't happen around dawn. I've been in some, but they're not the norm. I'd say like more common will be later in the day or at dusk.
Mhm.
Dusk seems to be a time. And so actually when I decided the time to have the ultra, the reason I picked 5 a.m. I thought a lot about 5 a.m. and I consulted with a lot of different people. So that's why I do it at that time. We have definitely had some pretty bad dust storms, but it was like later in the day, like probably starting around like 9:30 or 10 a.m. So a lot of runners were finishing up or going out for their last loops. And I remember I was running on Esplanade and I literally had no idea what street like I was by
Mm,
because I just
mm,
couldn't see anything. It was just like, I mean, if you've never been in a dust storm, that's what it's like. It's like totally crazy. And then I guess in terms of participants, so my friend Todd and I, he's my campmate, we kind of bonded over like runners are the worst. Like sometimes runners can be so mean. And so it's kind of crazy because the Burning Man Ultra is like a free event. I spend tons of time organizing it. Like I don't get paid for this. I love it. I do it because I love it. That's why I do it. And I've had people like be really mean to me. So I was kind of like telling him about, I can't believe runners do this. And he was working for a running clothes company and he's like, yeah, runners are the worst. He's like, I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to make a dickhead award. So he took like a toilet brush and he spray painted it gold and he put like dickhead award on it. And so I was like, okay, so we had it on the table where people register for the race. And I was like, I wasn't going to give it out to anybody.
mm.
And so one year this guy came and gave me a really hard time. So I let runners pick their own numbers and he got in an argument with me about the number he got. It's so ridiculous. And he made things so complicated for me. Literally, he made me cry. And I was crying. And so after he left, like then I was the only one at my camp. I ended up like all these other people are like waiting in line and this guy is like throwing this big fit. And I was like so upset because I was like, I can't believe like, this guy, like I'm giving all this and he's being so mean to me. So I told Todd about it. And Todd was like, pointing him out to me the day of the race. So I pointed him out the day of the race and Todd went up to him after he finished. He was like, congratulations. The guy was like, what? He's like, you won. He's like, what? He's like, you won the dickhead award. And he gave him the toilet brush. And he's like, you can't run the ultra again until you clean one of the porta potties with this brush. And he was like, what are you talking about? And Todd's like, you made the race director cry. If you make the race director cry, this is what you win. So we never held up on our end of the bargain.
That's amazing. I mean, those porta johns. I mean, you put 60,000 people through porta johns in the desert sun for a week, and it's not a pretty sight or smell. So that's hilarious. You're very right though that runners can sometimes be so entitled, and you realize that, hey, like this is an event in the middle of nowhere. Like this isn't supposed to be like the Boston Marathon or the New York City Marathon with the logistics. And nobody's going to be, you know, I don't know, holding your hand through this in such a way. Like it is very much like a primal experience. And so you kind of have to roll with it. It's not meant to be like a perfectly polished event. So.
I mean, it's the radical self-reliance thing too, is like a lot of people have complained to me like, oh, one year I got complaints, you had too many gels. The next year someone was like, you don't have enough gels. So now what I tell people is I'm like, listen, you bring what you need for your race. So like you can leave, we have drop bag areas, you can leave the kitchen sink. I don't care. You leave the stuff for you. And then everyone gives a snack to the aid station. So if we don't have enough gels, well, you know what, you should have your 6 gels or however many you need on the side or in your little fanny pack or whatever it is. Like, and then like it should be on you. Like we all have to take care of ourselves, the basics, but if you need help beyond that, like that's what everyone's here for. Like I tell people like medical staff are there to kind of like help us if like something really bad goes wrong, but we should all have band-aids and things like that.
Yeah. So the race, the first year, I believe that there were around 30, high 30s numbers of starters. And I think it's gotten as big as maybe like the low 200s now over the last decade. Do you have aspirations of making it bigger, or is it just whatever happens?
I don't really have a strong desire to make it bigger. If it naturally grows, that's awesome. But, I think, so I've had people come and tell me like, oh, you should do a 50 miler or 100 miler at Burning Man. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because I want to have a burn too. Like this is a lot of work for me. And, I used to have the race on Wednesday, which meant I literally didn't get to start to like enjoying and relaxing at Burning Man until Thursday. So now I moved it earlier. And there are other reasons too. People tend to get more messed up later in the week. So I figured it would be like better for like dehydration and other issues. But one of the reasons I'm nervous about, if I put on a 50 miler, like Burning Man, we get a lot of people in the ultra who sign up who are like, they finish and they're like crusted with salt, and like people who have not been able to walk back to their camp, who have to have someone drive them, like they get in bad states. And I don't want and I feel like if I opened it up as a 50 miler, we would end up in those situations. And I just don't want to jeopardize the race. I mean, that could also even jeopardize Burning Man if like multiple people are having serious issues. So I don't try to encourage like people who have like zero training to run, but like I have friends who are now my friends actually, because I was like, hey, you run a half marathon, come on in, like people who are like, oh, I just want to run a half. I'm like, no, you have to run the full thing. And like people who like cried at the finish line because they didn't think they could do it. And that's one of the things I love about keeping it open to them. But, I think Burning Man, I think the ultra is naturally growing a little bit more each year. Like for a long time, people didn't know what was going on. And I remember I knew we made it as a race when one year I was running and somebody said, what are they doing? Are they running a marathon? And another person said, no, it's an ultra marathon. And I was like, oh my God, they even know the vocabulary. Like that was like amazing. It made me want to cry.
I love it. Yeah. An ultra marathon is extreme enough, especially when you combine it with the weather and the environment and just the austerity of the entire event. And it feels like if someone's looking for a Burning Man 50 miler, then, maybe they just keep running and do another lap if they're fast enough or whatever the case is.
I had a friend, one of my campmates that one year, he started running at midnight. And he did, maybe it was 10 p.m. and he finished right before the 5 a.m. start. And then he ran another 50K.
Oh, wow.
And he was incredibly well-trained and talented runner. He was pretty exhausted after, but,
Yeah. Do you have any aspirations to organize races in New York or in the default world?
I've done like a couple fat asses. The problem with organizing races in the default world is you have to worry about insurance and things like that. I think one of the reasons I like doing the races at Burning Man and putting on those races is that that's like my community of burners. And that's one of the things I love about it. So I'd rather do it there than, here.
Right. So let's transition to kind of like the fartlek, just a fun little word association piece. What is your playa name?
Cherry Bomb.
Cherry Bomb. And what's your husband's?
Warrior.
Got it. Did you give your daughter one?
Her playa name's Shuno.
What is Shuno?
Like shoes, like on your feet? No, because she has this thing where especially her left shoe, but she takes off shoes and she was running around Burning Man barefoot the whole time, so they called her Shuno.
I love it. What would you be doing in life if you didn't have the constraints of the default world?
Maybe living at an ashram in India, studying bhakti yoga and writing and
Cool. What is your favorite place to run?
Ooh, Black Rock City. But if you had to say outside of that, I would probably say the Vermont 100 I do every year. It's so gorgeous. Like it's a place I usually don't run with my phone or my camera, but it's a good place to run with a camera because it's so beautiful.
Which part of Vermont is this in?
It's like kind of more, I think it's more south. It's by Brownsville, Scottney, kind of over there.
Got it. I guess Vermont's not a very big state, so you're probably running through most of it within 100 miles.
Clover shape, so.
Yeah. Would you say that's your favorite race too?
Obviously the Burning Man Ultra is my favorite race,
Mhm.
but I'd say for hundreds, that or TGMI, the Great New York 100 miler, which was, you're new to New York, you might not know it. You need to get involved with it next year, even if you're just pacing or volunteering. But it's a 100 miler, kind of like un unpermitted around New York City, and they kind of like embody some of the spirits of Burning Man, and the ultra there. But it's such a fun race of like everyone, like, all the local ultra runners, if they're not running, they're pacing or they're like volunteering at an aid station, and people giving you shots like at the aid. It's so much fun.
Love it. When racing, maybe either now or back in your more competitive days, would you rather win the race or run a personal record?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I can't say. It's hard.
Yeah, it's tough to choose between the two. Okay, so my guest today has been Cherie Yanek, just incredible person organizing an incredible event and in a really incredible place. Getting to talk with you during this time really made me very nostalgic for the event, and a little bit sad that it's not going to happen in real life this year. But it'll be back again, and people have a lot of time to plan if they want to research more about Black Rock City and Burning Man and getting involved. You can find Cherie online at burningman50k.com or CherylYanek.com. That's CherylYanek. And if you look on Facebook, you can also find her at Burner Runners if you search for it. So Cherie, thanks for spending time with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.